Welcome back to Gotcha Interact. Today we're going to be talking about a new character in a pre-release setting of Jiaoqiu. Now he is going to be a fire 5-star character, and he's going to be along the path of Nihility. He's got a lot of stuff going for him, and at least from when we were, kind of looking at him previously and talks about him, a lot of people were maybe hoping for a Nihility healer, considering he is a Foxian healer, and then as a occupation, as well as in general, people were hoping maybe some buffs to the idea of the DOT team, maybe going off of Gwen Ifen. There's been a lot of talks about him, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into his skills. Looking at his basic attack, it states that it deals fire damage equal to 100% of Jiaoqiu's attack to a single enemy. The skill, on the other hand, states that it deals fire damage equal to 180% of Jiaoqiu's attack to a single enemy, and fire damage equal to 90% of Jiaoqiu's attack to enemies adjacent to it. It also has a 100% base chance to inflict 1 stack of Ashen Roast on the primary target, so the first target that it hits, not the adjacent enemies that it hits. Rift, could you tell us a little bit about his ultimate?
Looking at his ultimate, this is going to set the number of Ashen Roast stacks that Vixen just talked about in the skill, which we will talk about here in a minute. It's going to set the number of those Ashen Roast stacks on the enemy targets to the highest number of Ashen Roast stacks present on the battlefield. Then it's going to activate a field and deals fire damage equal to 200% of Jiaoqiu's attack to all enemies. While inside this field that Jiaoqiu creates, enemy targets will take 15% more ultimate damage with a 60% base chance of being inflicted with 1 stack of Ashen Roast when taking action. This effect can only be triggered once for enemies in each turn. This field does last for 3 turns, so it has a really great uptime, and its duration will decrease by 1 every time it gets back to Jiaoqiu's turn. Now, do note that if Jiaoqiu is knocked down, of course the field will also be dispelled.
Going beyond this to help even more, like Riff was talking about, now going a little bit further into his talent to really talk about the Ashen Roast stacks. The talent states that when Jiaoqiu uses his basic attack, his skill, or his ultimate to hit an enemy, there's a 100% base chance to deal 1 stack of Ashen Roast to that enemy, increasing the initial damage enemies receive by 15%. With each stack that you get, it additionally increases damage by 5% to a max of 5 stacks, and Ashen Roast will last for 2 whole turns.
Looking quickly at Jiaoqiu's technique, after you use his technique, you're going to create a special kind of dimension that lasts for 15 seconds, and after engaging enemies inside this dimension, you're going to deal fire damage equal to 100% of Jiaoqiu's attack to all enemies at the beginning of the battle, and you also have a 100% base chance of applying 1 Ashen Roast stack. Now, only one dimension created by allies can exist at the same time. So other allies or characters that can create dimensions, kind of like Sampo or Ratio, you will only get to use one or the other.
Looking quickly at each of his bonus abilities, we're going to be talking about the first one, which is Seared Scent. This states that when a field exists, enemies entering combat will be inflicted with Ashen Roast stacks. The number of Ashen Roast stacks applied will match the highest number of Ashen Roast stacks inflicted by the field that is active, with a minimum of 1 stacks. So basically, if the field is there, the number of stacks applied at the highest amount. So if one of them has 5, one of them has 2, one of them has 1, all enemies will then that are going into this field and maybe starting a new wave or whatnot will get that maximum that the other enemies have at either 5, 4, 3, whichever the highest number of Ashen Roast stacks are, they will get that high amount.
Jiaoqiu's second bonus ability states that when his effect hit rate is higher than 80%, for each 15% that goes above that, Jiaoqiu is going to additionally gain 60% attack, up to a maximum of 240%. So that is kind of crazy. So do make sure when you do go to build your Jiaoqiu, you're stacking as much effect hit rate as you possibly can, because that will have kind of a double effect for you.
Going alongside of that, on the opposite sense, his third bonus ability states that when a field exists, the enemy's effect hit rate is reduced by 30%, and at the start of each turn, the enemy will receive additional fire damage equal to 150% of Jiaoqiu's attack. So there's a lot going on when looking at his entire kit. There's a lot of effect hit rate things. You're trying to constantly give a lot of Ashen Roast stacks on things, and then while doing so, you're trying to do damage as well with him, but it seems like a lot of what he can do as well, especially when talking about his ultimate, creating that field, it seems like that's kind of what you're trying to lead up to. The Ashen Rose stacks can help a little bit more, maybe with some extra characters, but it's really just personal damage that he's really focusing on. Doesn't seem like there's anything too crazy in terms of maybe DOT on what he can do, even though he is a Nihility character. Maybe this could be a nice DOT idea. Just keep in mind, though, that these Ashen Rose stacks are only lasting, once again, from the talent for 2 whole turns. And that is the nice thing, is that, his basics, his skills, and his ultimate hitting an enemy can at least give 1 stack of Ashen Roast. Doing that allows him to just keep the stacks up, as well as do some good damage personally from himself. But also the idea, if we kind of look into things, I can see from his ultimate, he's helping his other teammates do more ultimate damage. Once again, when we talked about his ultimate, while you're inside the field, enemy targets will take 15% more ultimate damage. So characters that are going heavily into erudition are going to extremely like Jiaoqiu. And, obviously, first and foremost, Acheron, we think of as the biggest one. Allowing these stacks on an enemy, putting constant Ashen Rose stacks on enemies, is going to charge Acheron's ult faster, as well as that burst is going to help Acheron do more damage as well. So in general, he's got some good damage, and he's got some nice supportive abilities, specifically for a lot of erudition characters.
Yeah, I definitely like how kind of synergetic he is with Acheron, like you talked about, the ultimate damage. And when you add up all of those Ashen Rose stacks that he can deal, looking back at the talent, if you have that talent at level 10, you're giving the initial 15% damage increase plus 5% with a total of 5 stacks. So you're getting 15 plus 25%. That's up to 40% just more damage you're dealing to these characters with any kind of damage. So as a Nihility character, it just kind of makes sense. Like massive kind of buffing that you're giving. You're getting the ultimate damage there from his own ultimate, which has a really good uptime of 3 turns. Sounds like he's a very comfortable character and a very good character at that, to just kind of throw in as a flex character to just increase really whatever team you're doing. He's going to increase the damage of, and also deal a lot of personal damage himself. And, wanting that effect hit rate to obviously make sure you're applying those stacks as much as possible without fail, basically, but then also getting that attack buff, once again, helping out his personal damage. And I do appreciate, because of that his stat bonuses, a lot of his traces are actually going to help his effect hit rate. You can get like a total of 28% effect hit rate just from his traces. So that will be a little bit comfortable and kind of help out get to a really high effect hit rate.
Looking in general at him as a character, obviously he's a Nihility character, so the first question that I think always kind of comes up is he going to be a good, DOT character? In general, I think he's putting out a lot of personal damage in general. I think when looking at his entire kit, it doesn't state anything, when you look at someone like Black Swan, her kit, a lot of it is, increasing, is just extra, doing extra wind DOT damage. Kafka is just a lot of extra, she's adding maybe some extra damage on top of it. Just DOTs that are already on enemies. When she does a skill, they do an extra bit of damage if it's already on there. She does a lot of extra help with her talent as well. Everything is all focused around DOT, and there's constant talks about DOTs in their kit. But when you look at Jiaoqiu, nothing explicitly states, increasing DOT damage or decreasing, defense. From what I can see from his personal kit, at least from what right now I don't think he's going to be a DOT specific character. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be better than what we have maybe in someone like Gwenaifen. Maybe that'll change. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. Maybe we'll see kind of in the future if that actually changes. But with Gwenaifen helping kind of trigger burn on characters a little bit easier than maybe some other characters, personally, I just feel like he's a little bit more focused on helping, maybe being a support for other things besides specifically looking at maybe buffing the DOT team that's already out right now.
Yeah, I can agree in some aspects. I do run the DO team quite a bit just because I have Kafka, Black Swan, and I love using my Gwenaifen. So if I had Jiaoqiu, I could see myself replacing Gwenaifen with Jiaoqiu, but like you're saying, it would be difficult in certain scenarios of the game, especially if you're doing a certain type of run in Divergent Universe, or one of those things where you're getting a lot of blessings for Nihility, increasing your DOT. Jiaoqiu's not getting a lot out of that. I wish there was something in his kit where he could apply burn somehow, even if it was very slow or not as often, because just the fact that he could apply something like that means he could be somewhat viable for a team like that. And I think he still could be viable for a DOT team, just because, he's just buffing damage. He's applying stacks, and Kafka and Black Swan naturally are going to like that. But because he's not applying burn, and who knows, maybe he will apply burn just inherently. And if he does, that's going to be awesome, because then, Kafka and Black Swan can work with that. But if he's not, it is kind of a sacrifice between him and Gweniphen. Gweniphen's just a really good 4-star is what it comes down to, specifically for DOT, much like you pointed out. So, but I do think for those Acheron havers, Jiaoqiu is a pretty considerable upgrade for the team in general.
Well, I think the biggest thing when looking at him, I'm interested to see what he can do, but I think the biggest thing, at least from talks online and whatnot, and theory crafters and, what we can find, looking at his Eidolons, that's where it seems like he actually starts to become a DOT type of user. There's no real DOT teams, using for what you were talking about, that DOT team with Kafka and Black Swan. It doesn't seem like he can really do it until he gets to about his E2. And the reason why is because, we don't really talk about, Eidolons in the actual pre-release. We'll kind of get to that whenever we do the Topo not Topo when he's about to release. But in general, when looking at E2, it states that Ashen Roast can be considered as a burn status. Enemies with Ashen Roast will suffer fire DOT equal to 300% of Jiaoqiu's attack at the start of each turn. He probably can do it, but it's just going to take Eidolons. So if you want to use him for the DOT team, you're going to have to get to E2 to actually make it work. Keeping all that in mind, the biggest thing you want to just focus on, if you're really going to be grabbing him, if you're just looking for, actually thinking about getting him and you don't have a lot of, Stellar Jade, and you actually care about maybe how your account looks, you're going to want to focus on having Acheron before thinking about getting him. There are other characters that I'm sure could use him in, some kind of special ways and whatnot, and I'm sure with different versions coming out in the future, looking at him will get a little bit different, but for right now, it seems like he's pretty stuck into that Acheron team.
I will say I do appreciate that just part of how he works. He can apply those Ashen Rose stacks even with just something like a basic attack. So I just appreciate that he doesn't seem very skill point heavy or selfish about it. Like, I think throwing him in the team, it's not going to be like, oh man, I'm going to have to worry about my skill point economy. I think it can be, a little bit stable. It kind of reminds me of Black Swan, just because Black Swan, she applies that Arcana with her basic attack. And so, yes, you want to use the skills when you can, because they're doing helpful things, obviously, but at least the basic attack is still, in Jiaoqiu's case here, it's applying a stack. So, and you're getting a skill point. So there's kind of a 2-for-1 right there that I think can be valuable in certain teams. Maybe you're using a team that's just tends to be skill point hungry. And so maybe you could use Sparkle on that team to help with that. And Jiaoqiu is also not selfish. There's a lot of different things I think you can do, because Jiaoqiu just seems kind of like a general Nihility character where he's just increasing a lot of damage, ultimate damage. It's pretty broad buffs. So I think he can be placed in a lot of different places. And I think that does make him a little bit free to play friendly.
I totally agree, especially with, some pretty good characters that you can, maybe the 4-stars that you could get, even if you lose your 50-50 like Himiko or something, helping more Erudition characters do more damage. It's kind of nice to see. It's kind of niche, but it's actually kind of fun. And, especially with a lot of the Erudition characters, for instance, Jade and Argenti coming out already, and Jade being really good on AoE Erudition type teams, never mind other characters that can do really well, maybe if people have Jing Yuan, that can kind of bring him a little bit back. I know that he's kind of quote unquote fallen out of the meta. People aren't using him as much, but that can, maybe make some fun for people if they're trying to make, have a little bit more fun with their Jing Yuan. Maybe they can make him a little bit better. Argenti's maybe the same way. Maybe you can just make him do a little bit more damage. He already does a lot of damage, but there you go. Himiko, Herta, all of our Erudition characters, I think, are going to have a fun time if you use Jiaoqiu in those teams. Well, that's everything we've got in this video talking about Jiaoqiu. If you guys did like the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe, as well as go ahead and check out our Discord if you guys want to. If you guys are kind of looking forward to maybe Jiaoqiu, let us know down in the comments. If you guys are looking forward to him being maybe a little bit different, if his versions are going to change before he releases, maybe a little bit more to DOT. What are you guys looking for in terms of Jiaoqiu? Thank you guys for watching the video though, and we'll see you in the next one.